It's hard to take a movement seriously if you say something is murder, but you don't act like it.
We are here at Bringing America Back to Life conference in Cleveland, Ohio, and the whole conference was closed by a stunning speaker who blew everyone away. And for your entertainment value, it is now 11 o'clock at night, and said speaker has nonetheless agreed to come on and speak with us. It was so stunning what she said that it really moved not only all the, 1,000+ pro-lifers in the audience, but also the ones who've been fighting this fight for many, many years. I talked to some of them. They were really stunned, particularly by what she said with regard to, are we winning? What's the real problem going on in America, in the world regarding abortion? You're going to want to stay tuned for this John Henry Weston show with none other than Abby Johnson. Abby, so good to be with you. So
good to be with you.
Your stunning conclusion to your stunning talk was really hard-hitting. You started with something that moved my heart because you mentioned Canada. If you wouldn't mind, give us a rundown on that.
So I just flew in from Canada. I had an event in Lethbridge, Alberta, and I've always really admired the Canadian pro-life movement because as long as I've been speaking in Canada, I have appreciated the fact that they are consistently no compromise on the issue of abortion. And that is in stark contrast to the pro-life movement in the United States. The pro-life movement in the United States is always willing and ready to compromise on the issue of the murder of our preborn. I definitely used to be a person that said, win what you can, get what you can, save as many as you can. But I've now just really realized over the past few years how terribly inconsistent that is. I think the pro-abortion movement sees that as terribly inconsistent as well. And I think it's hard to take a movement seriously if you say something is murder, but you don't act like it. It would be like the groups that want to abolish the death penalty, but they only think half of death penalty cases should be abolished. That would be ridiculous. And they would not get any traction and no one would take them seriously. Yet that has been the pro-life movement in the United States for decades, is, always willing to compromise, always willing to say, oh, okay, well, you can murder babies up until this point, but not past this point, or, in these cases, but not in these cases. And I just think that as a whole, I think if we wouldn't have allowed ourselves to be on the defense for the past 50 years, I think that we would actually see some significant progress. I mean, of course, the pro-life movement, everybody's happy that Roe's been overturned. And I mean, I guess I could say the same thing because, every pro-life group will tell you, it was a legislative decision that belonged in the ash heap of history, right? That's what every pro-life group says. But, is the country really better off now that Roe's been overturned? I can't tell you that I say, yeah, I can't tell you that I agree with that. Abortion is up. Late-term abortion is at historically high levels. Chemical abortion is available in every single state, legally in every single state. Every, pro-life group in the state of Texas and Louisiana and Alabama, all these places where abortion is supposedly illegal will tell you that no abortions are happening, but that's a blatant lie. I live in the state of Texas and they have legal access to abortion every single day, by the hundreds. Every week. The University of Texas and Guttmacher and these other organizations have come out and said that abortions in Texas have not decreased. And I believe them because we hear it on our hotline. We hear it in our phone calls. Women are still getting abortions. And I can go online to over 70 websites in the state of Texas and type in my own information or a fake name, fake date of birth, fake last menstrual period. I can type in any information I want and tell them I don't have any money and get abortion pills sent to any address I want to for free. That's the reality of abortion in our country. So what I would say to people is that we were grossly unprepared for the overturn of Roe, because the pro-abortion movement is always ready. And I can say that just from working there for 8 years. They're always ready. They were ready for Roe to be overturned. They had their playbook written out. They knew that this was going to be a state's battle. They already had, Prop 1 ready. They had these things in motion. They already had them ready. And we thought that we were going to have this big victory and that abortions were going to go away. And that's just not going to happen.
So what do you see happening? Because that message sounds like, oh, that's so horrible. Where are we at? What's going to happen? What's the real crux of it then?
So the real crux is tackling the consumerism of abortion. So we have a consumer problem. And we've been saying in the pro-life movement that we have a supplier problem. But we really don't have a supplier problem anymore, because the overwhelming majority of women, about 65% of people performing abortions, are the women themselves. So, it used to be that the majority of abortions were happening inside of abortion clinics. And so, the pro-life movement said, well, we've got to go after the doctor. We have to go after the supplier, the person that is actually supplying the abortion, the person that's actually, killing the baby, the person that's doing the damage, the person that is, killing the baby, the one holding the instruments, the one giving out the pills, right? Like that's who we're going to have to go after. That's the one we're going to have to prosecute. Well, what happens when it's the woman killing her own child? What happens when she's the one checking the boxes and ordering the pills and paying for it, and they're coming directly to her address, and she's never talking to a doctor because she's the one that is solely responsible for the death of her child? Like, she is her own abortionist, and that's happening in about 65% of the cases now in our country. So when the woman becomes her own abortionist, so then we have this reckoning in the pro-life movement, that's been, I think, brewing for a long time. When do we start saying, okay, we call for personhood sometimes in the pro-life movement, and then sometimes we say, well, we have a big carve out for women where we say, well, women should be allowed to kill their babies. Women should be allowed to murder their babies, without penalty. They should be able to murder their babies because it's their babies and they're the moms, and that's perfectly okay. But nobody else can murder the babies. So if I'm a drunk driver and I hit a woman who's pregnant, then somehow at that moment, that child does have personhood because I'm the one that killed the baby. And so I'm going to be charged with double homicide. But if that woman was on her way to an abortion clinic and then decided, I'm going to kill my baby that day, that baby has no personhood. And she can kill her baby, and it's totally fine. And it's not considered murder. And that's insane. And that is incredibly inconsistent. And so that's going to have to come to a head in the pro-life movement. And that kind of comes to the idea of victimhood. Are women victims? The woman that uses abortion as birth control, is she a victim? Or is she making a conscious decision to have an abortion? And I do think that this is where we kind of get into a generational divide, because there are a lot of women that had abortions in the 70s and 80s and, even the 90s, and they really didn't know what they were doing. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have, social media. We didn't have ultrasound images available to us. Women really didn't know what they were doing. And they really were, I think most of them at that time really were victims. They were, victims to, just doctors. Doctors weren't telling them, like, we're actually performing an abortion. They called it a menstrual extraction. They said all of these things. Women didn't have ultrasounds available. Like, it was just kind of this ignorance. It's not that way anymore. Women every woman that has an abortion knows she's pregnant with a baby. They all call their babies babies. The majority of women that have abortions have already had an ultrasound of their child that they abort. They are celebrating the fact that they're aborting their babies. They're having abortion parties after they abort their babies. They're taking videos of their abortion and posting it on TikTok. These are not victims of abortion. We go out to abortion clinics and, we say to them, like, please don't do this to your baby. And they're flipping us off and saying, I can't wait to murder this kid. These are not victims of abortion. And we are saying two different things in the pro-life movement. We're saying, women are so strong and they can do whatever they want and they can overcome any challenge that comes in front of them. But they're also really stupid idiots that can't figure out whether they're pregnant with a baby or not, and they're all victims. So it's kind of one or the other. Either they're strong and they're independent and they can figure things out on their own and they can overcome challenges, or they're dumb idiots that can't figure out how to open their phone and figure out if they're pregnant with a baby or not. But it's not both. It's kind of one or the other. And I believe women are strong and incredible. And I was not a victim. I've had 2 abortions. I was not a victim. I was just selfish. And the majority of women having abortions today are selfish. They're doing it for personal gain, for personal reasons.
I think all Christians, all Catholics believe that in the end, this will be righted somehow. Mm-hmm. How is that going to happen?
So I think we're going to have to push bills for equal protection, where abortion is considered murder, where murder is penalized appropriately, and all people are considered to be created equal and are protected under equal rights. And, it is the pro-life movement that stops these bills from coming to fruition. So, it was pro-life groups in Louisiana that stalled it last legislative session. It will be pro-life groups in Texas that stop it this session. It will be pro-life groups in North Dakota that stall the equal protection bill there in North Dakota. It will be pro-life groups in Georgia that stall it this year. So there's been an equal protection bill introduced into over 20 states this year, this legislative session, and they won't go through. I've testified on several of them. They won't go through. They will be stalled. They won't make it to a calendar committee. They won't make it to committee floor. They won't make it to the floor for a vote because of pro-life groups.
Wow.
And it's the same over and over again. It's the same every legislative session, because we just, in the movement, are not ready to treat abortion like murder. We say we are. We say abortion is murder. We call it murder, but we don't want to act like it's murder.
One of the things you said that really struck me was, this is not a political problem. What kind of problem is it then?
It's a spiritual problem. This is a sin issue. It's a lack of accountability issue. We as parents, you have 8 kids, I have 8 kids. We teach our children right from wrong, and we teach them that there are consequences related to their actions. And we have taught an entire society of people that that's not the case, that you can kind of do whatever you want. You can have consequence-free sex. You can have consequence-free abortions. You can have consequence-free relationships. You can take drugs and it's consequence-free. You can buy drugs, it's consequence. Everything, right? Mm-hmm. And we aren't teaching them that you actually have to be accountable for your actions. When I had an abortion in the year 2000, when I was 20 years old, if I would have known that there was a possibility that I could have been convicted of a crime for having an abortion, I would have never had that first abortion. And to be quite honest, I'm not really even sure that I would have been participating in such risky sexual behavior if I would have known there wasn't an easy way out of it. Because that changes our behavior. Like, if we know there's not, I'm not going to easily get away with this, that changes our behavior. It's the same reason, I didn't sneak out of my house to go hang out with my friends when I was in high school, because I knew my parents were not having any of that, right? But I would sneak out of my other friends' houses whose parents were super, you can get away with whatever you want.
Okay.
It's the same concept. you know? And if I wouldn't have had my first abortion, I wouldn't have gone on to work in the abortion industry. And if I wouldn't have worked in the abortion industry, I wouldn't have the lives of 22,000 babies weighing on my conscience for the rest of my earthly life. And if I wouldn't have worked in the abortion industry, I wouldn't have had my second abortion. I mean, these decisions, the lack of consequence, the lack of accountability, it changes the trajectory of our lives. And so that's why it matters. That's why holding people accountable matters. And that's where I kind of see this movement right now. It's not, we don't hold people accountable because of a lack of compassion. We hold people accountable because that's the most compassionate thing we can do. And I mean, that's just from my own experience.
For U.S. residents, creating a will has never been easier. Thanks to My Legacy Will, an online platform free of charge, you can now create your own will and choose to include LifeSite News in it, specify where your funeral will take place, the number of masses to be offered for your soul, and how your estate will be distributed. We would be deeply grateful if you remembered LifeSite News in your will. Visit mylegacywill.com/LifeSite News. Thank you for your support, and may God bless you. I think, though, it's a huge lesson for the church. It is probably the most evident thing the church has done in removing consequences from people.
I mean, how often are we actually calling sin, right? I mean, I just did an event in Arizona. You know, it was pretty much all youth, pretty much all young people there. And, you know, I'm standing up there and I just was like, you know, there's a lot of things that you guys are not being told are wrong. And so I'm going to stand up here and tell you what they are, because somebody has to tell you. And, you know, I'm like, if you're looking at pornography, like men and women, if you're looking at pornography, if you're lusting after someone or something, like that's a sin. You need to stop. If you are cohabitating with your partner, that's gravely sinful. You need to stop. If you are participating in, you know, premarital sex, you need to stop. That's sinful. If you are, you know, entertaining homosexual action, that's sinful. You need to stop. If you are contracepting, that's sinful. You need to stop it. These are things that we're not telling people are sins. And sexual sin is, I think, one of the greatest pathways to lead us astray from the Lord. And we're just not talking about it. We're not telling our kids about it. We're not talking about it in the church. Nobody's talking about it, you know, in their homilies. We're just acting like we're all good here, you know. Meanwhile, the majority of people having abortions or sitting in church every Sunday, like we clearly don't have it together. And it's because we're just not talking about the hard things. And we're acting like everybody comes to church because they just want to hear like an uplifting message. And like, that's not why I go to church. Like if I go to mass and I leave and the homily hasn't made me feel uncomfortable, I feel like the priest has not done their job. You know, like I don't want to go to mass and just like feel good. Like I want to go to mass and be challenged. You know, this is my leader. Like this is my spiritual leader. Like, challenge me, you know? Like step on my toes, make me feel uncomfortable, make me want to do better, like be better for the Lord. Yeah. But that's not what we're doing.
It's amazing because what you said at first about the taking away of consequences and this latter stuff, so many of our most famous, most well-known, even prolific and well-spoken church leaders have said openly they believe there's no one in hell. Bishop Barron, Pope Francis, the list could go on and on. But really big names. They're not, especially with Bishop Barron, you're not talking about someone who, you know, he does give some powerful homilies, but they're on record saying this, never having retracted it. And that completely removes the consequences. Because if there is no hell or there's nobody in hell, does it really matter?
You know, I don't know what everybody else says, but I know that scripture says there is a heaven and a hell. And I don't believe that it would have been created if no one was in it.
Jesus said, narrow is the road that leads to life. Few there are that find it. broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many there are that go therein. And I was just talking to Monsignor Charles Pope, from Washington. He just wrote a book. It's called The Hell There Is. I was stunned by this. He said, if you read all the Gospels, there's 31 sermons of Jesus in all the Gospels, 31. In 21 of them, he discussed hell. I was like, what? If you go and check it out, there it is. Jesus was the most hell-preaching guy in the whole of the Bible. And so it's just totally stunning. So this new belief of an empty hell or there is no hell or whatever is so anti-Jesus, anti-Christ, you might say, because it does, to me anyway, it totally gets to your first point about the lack of consequence and to your second point about they need to challenge us. If there is no eternal consequence, none of it really, it might be nicer to do it this way, but in the end, it doesn't really matter.
I think there's a lot of people, like I remember, I'll just tell you, like John and I remember working at Planned Parenthood. I grew up in church, so like I knew there was like a heaven and a hell, I don't know that we talk about hell enough. I don't know that we talk about the finality of hell, and I think we talk a lot about like buddy Jesus, and like, God's so merciful, and he is, but he's also just. And God is a God of justice. And we see that over and over in scripture. So I remember when I worked at the clinic, I remember, I was going to church every Sunday that I worked at Planned Parenthood. And they used that. They wanted me to tell Christian women who came in, like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, I'm the director here, but I work it. I go to church and I'm the director here. So clearly it's fine for you to have an abortion, right? They wanted me to use my Christianity, but I went to a very pro-abortion church. I went to an Episcopal church. So it's like all the bells, but no morals, And I remember one time like seeing the people outside praying, and I was looking at them kind of all day. I could see them out in front of my window. And I remember looking at them and thinking and wondering to myself, if I died today, do I think I would go to hell? Like I remember thinking that to myself and thinking, yeah, I think I would go to hell if I died today. And then something in my mind was like, well, that's okay. Like, it'll be worth it. Like, it'd be worth it to go to hell because I'm doing something like so good here. And that shouldn't be. Like, we should be taught the fear of hell. Like, we should be taught fear of hell. We should be taught fear of being separated from God for eternity. That should be so scary for us that even the thought of being in hell would be enough to get us like to light our butts up and like get us out of whatever we're doing. That would even like put us questioning that decision, that we're making. But I don't think we talk about it enough because we just talk about this like fun-loving Jesus, that like wants to play basketball with you or whatever. And it's like, that's really not it. Like he wants everyone to live in eternity with him, but not everybody makes that decision.
Yeah, the old act of contrition. Oh my God, I'm heartily sorry for having offended thee because I fear the loss of heaven and the pains of hell. It's no longer that. But that honestly used to be what you would say every single night. That's the traditional Catholic prayer. It's gone from our normal nightly prayer now, but that was it. And it was very constant. So it was a thing. It does amaze me that Jesus spent so much time talking about it. Gospel reading from about a month ago now was that reading. Jesus talks about hell again in one of his homilies. And the apostles, it's the one about the camel through the eye of the needle. Mm-hmm. And the apostles at the end of it go, sheesh, can anybody be saved? So it's like, this guy, our Lord, was so adamant about this. He spent the majority of his major sermons talking about it. And he freaked out his apostles so much that they were like, so can anybody be saved? And his response was, with man, it's impossible. But with God, all things are possible. So I really do think you're onto something with regard to this. It's a need. We have to turn this around. And it has to be turned around, I think anyway, at the level of the church, of the faith, because that's where everything will come from.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I remember several years ago, it was kind of like after I first came into the pro-life movement, I remember there was this big push to kind of secularize the pro-life movement. And, I was kind of like, all right, like, I guess that makes sense, like draw more people in. But then I just realized how foolish that was, because we actually don't need like a big tent in the pro-life movement. Like, we don't need broadness in our movement, because the path to eternal life is not broad. It's narrow. And so I'm not like trying to draw people into the pro-life movement just to have sheer numbers, right? Like, I'm trying to draw the right people into our movement to actually end this thing. Like, I'm trying to draw the right people in so that we can minister to people, so that we can save not just physical lives, but like eternal lives. So it's not just about having bodies in here. That's not what this movement is about. But for a while, it felt like that's just what we were trying to do. It was like with the Republican Party, like this big tent sort of party. And look where that's gotten us, right? Now we're the party that believes in gay marriage. And you got, transgender people walking around, CPAC. And it's like, what are we doing? Log cabin Republicans opening up for the Republican National Convention, and it's like gay everywhere, and we've kind of lost our morals, and the GOP tipped the pro-life plank out of his platform. It's like, we don't even recognize ourselves anymore. Like, we're dang near Democrats. And that is exactly what's going to happen to the pro-life movement if we don't really suck it in and say, this is a movement based on the principles of Christ. This is not like the MAGA movement. This is not where we just like accept everyone and take everyone and we allow people to be, pro-life and this and pro-life and trans and pro-life. No, we're here to draw people to the Lord, not coddle them in their sinfulness. That's not who we are. We are always, we want you to come. We want you to leave changed. We want you to be drawn into this movement because the fragrance of Christ draws you here. Not because openness to sinfulness draws you here. And that's something that I feel like we've kind of lost a little bit. We need to bring that back. The Catholic Church has always been at the head of the pro-life movement, but not because we were just loosey-goosey and like accepted everything. It was because we were staunchly defending the personhood of the preborn. And that's where we need to stay. We need to stay there, doing what we do best, protecting the most vulnerable among us. People, I think, are naturally drawn in. I mean, like, look at former abortion workers who have left the industry and have like gone public with their story. Almost all of them are Catholic, right? Because it's the truth. It's that narrow truth that draws you in. Yeah. It's not like the come as you are thing. It's not that crap that draws you in. It's the traditional truth of Christ. That's what draws sinners in.
Abby, I want to thank you for saying the hard things, because they are hard things. They're hard things for people to hear. They're very hard to say, because I'm sure you get flack a lot. But God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this in the middle of the night. Yeah. And all my bless to your family that puts up with you running away so often. But we're certainly grateful. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
And God bless all of you. And we'll see you next time. Hi everyone, this is John Henry Weston for LifeSite News. We hope you found this video insightful. For more content like this, be sure to check out the links in the description below. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest news concerning life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.